I will certainly be reaching out to him. He indicated he had a very important and serious message to deliver to our community. And so hopefully we can reschedule Minister Jamal to another date. But in the meantime, we want to go ahead and get ready for our speaker for this evening, Brother Anthony Browder from Washington, D.C. And that's right. And before we bring him on, we certainly want to help him in his work, because I can imagine that people like Brother Browder, who are following in the footsteps of Dr. John Henry Clark. And this is why Dr. Clark and Dr. Ben mean so much to us, because when people from all over the world come to New York and they have some knowledge of who they are, there are two people that they always ask us to take them to see. That's Dr. John Henry Clark and Dr. Yosef Ben Yakinen. And so we are very fortunate ourselves to be living in New York at a time when Dr. Clark and Dr. Ben are still alive. We're very fortunate. And so when Brother Browder came to New York today, he said, the only place I want to go is to see Dr. Clark. And that's where he went, to see Dr. Clark. So it shows you really when the story is really told, and I hope that somebody is taking good notes and being a great scribe to really write the real story of Dr. John Henry Clark and Dr. Ben. Now, they have written a lot about our history. It is now time for somebody to write about them, because they deserve that. Because wherever people go, I don't care where you go, all over this country, all over this world, these two men have sparked a revolution. And they are true giants. And we are so blessed to be living in their times. And we should continue to elevate their names. We should continue. There's no reason why people like Reverend Ike and others' names can be more elevated in our community than somebody like Dr. Clark or Dr. Ben. There's no reason for that. And so, again, it just shows you how important they are. And I say that once again because, as I said before, whatever we're doing on Sunday, we should spend a moment honoring Dr. Ben and showing him how important he is to us. And so the word should go out from here to abroad that all roads on Sunday at some time will eventually lead to the Ben house, and that our entire community should be there. There should be no room within 20 blocks of the Ben house. That's how packed that place ought to be. That's how packed that place ought to be. There should be no black person in this city that lived in New York during these times who do not know who Dr. Ben and Dr. Clark are. Y'all hear what I'm saying? There should be nobody. There should be no child, no young person, no adult who does not know who Dr. Ben and Dr. Clark are and what they really mean to us. And I hope over the next few days on radio that some of you, when you are calling in to Tony Brown talking about nothing, that you will also bring up Dr. Ben and where all of us should be on Sunday, and tell Tony Brown that he ought to have a front row seat. And take a vacation from cyberspace before he becomes space. So now we are getting ready to get started, and in terms of our collection, as I said on many occasions, on most nights, if everybody here just gave $4, we would probably meet our quota. Of course, we know everybody's not going to give $4. Some people, let's put our hands together for a brother that came to the Slave Theater last year, one of the leading authorities on ancient Kemet, director of the Comic Institute in Washington, D.C., Brother Anthony Browder. Let's give Brother Anthony Browder a big hand. Brother Anthony Browder. How you doing, brother? Good to see you. Just one sec. Brother Browder is someone that I know that some of y'all were holding y'all money back because y'all were trying to get his book. If you really want a real profound book on ancient Kemet, then Nile Valley Contributions to Civilization is a must. It is an absolute must for anybody who wants a deep understanding of ancient Kemet. That book is a must, and it is available in the back, as well as the Browder file, which is also important for us to have a real understanding of what we are looking at. For you to look at African symbols and African architecture, don't know what you're looking at, mean that you are not conscious, because you cannot interpret what you see. Many of us have eyesight, but we have no insight. We are here tonight to develop insight, which will ultimately lead to foresight. On the 24th, we will be leaving here early in the morning, going to Baltimore and Washington, D.C. That trip is an absolute must, because on Sunday, the 25th, we will be given a tour of Washington in terms of the African influence on European landmarks, memorials, buildings, and etc. by Brother Anthony Browder. Now, the cost is very minimal, because this is not something that we are making a profit at. Transportation to Baltimore and D.C., tour fees for both the Great Blacks in Wax Museum in Baltimore and the tour in D.C. on Sunday, as well as overnight lodgings at Howard Inn, which many of you know is black owned. And we keep our money in the family. We keep our money in the family. When we're going down on a black bus to black institutions, to a black tour guide, and staying in a black motel and eating black food. You can't get no blacker than that. And all of that for $125. Now that's not bad. You can't even ride Amtrak in style for that to D.C., much less stay at the Howard Inn and engage in 2 tours, as well as possibly seeing the Frederick Douglass home as well for $125. So that particular tour is a must, and it is an expansion on what we are doing here, and it is kept at a minimum cost so that everybody can be able to go. And more importantly, you should have your children on board. There are more than probably 1 million black children a year that are going to Washington to be brainwashed by white teachers who are telling them that George Washington never told a lie and Abraham Lincoln freed the slaves. And so we're very fortunate to have Brother Browder up here tonight with us at the Slave Theater. And as I said before, one of the great books on ancient Kemet is under his penmanship, and that's Nile Valley Contributions to Civilization. And you should get yourself one and get your children one, because any child can read that book and regain his or her identity. That's how important it is. So once again, as we get this lecture afoot, let us get on our feet once again as we present our keynote speaker for tonight, all the way from Washington, D.C., Brother Anthony Browder. Let's give him a UAM Slave Theater ovation. Anthony Browder.
All right, Hotep. I'm very pleased to be back with the family here in Brooklyn and to have another opportunity to share some information with you. I'm going to jump right into it because there's a wealth of information that I want to discuss this evening, and time is tight. What I'm going to talk about this evening, particularly, my subject is survival strategies for Africans living in America. Specifically, I'm going to be focusing on 7 steps to freedom, talking about some of the issues that confront us as African people and what it is that we need to begin to do to understand what those problems are and begin to modify our behavior so that we can ensure that we will gain our freedom, all right? Bring the mic closer. Okay, is that better? All right, thank you very much. One of the things that has been important for me in the process of developing this lecture and other material is that I've come to understand the importance of information. Processing, packaging, presenting information. I have essentially been in the information business for about 15 years. What started out as a hobby has now become my profession as a result of my being miseducated, understanding that I had been miseducated, and then beginning to actively participate in the process of re-educating myself. And so I focused primarily on the study of African history, culture, architecture, symbolism, philosophy, concepts of spirituality as well. And so the real significance of what I have devoted my life to was impressed upon me a couple of years ago when I was invited to do a lecture in Washington during Black History Month at a government agency by some of the black employees who had seen me speak at a conference. And it wasn't until I got to the facility that I discovered that this office was a branch of the CIA, okay? And when I was being introduced to the audience by the director of the facility, he made it a point to tell the audience that I was in the same business that they were in, except that the information that I gathered was information relative to the survival of African people. And so I thought about that, you know, because the whole role of information agencies or intelligence agencies is to gather data, to process, to analyze that data, and then to disseminate it to the appropriate individuals so that strategies can be developed for your survival, okay? So I've come to understand over the years that, you know, what we're engaged in, what you all are engaged in here every Wednesday night is more than just a lecture. We're talking about processing, disseminating information that is essential to your survival as a person, our survival collectively as a people. And so this topic is going to deal specifically with some of those aspects that I think we need to look at. And probably one of the most important issues that confronts us as a people is the issue of racism. We can't get away from it, right? We can't get away from it. If racism were not the biggest problem confronting African people in America, we wouldn't be here. We'd be back at home. Racism wasn't a problem, there would be no need for organizations such as the NAACP or the National Association of Black Social Workers, even the National Medical Association, which was founded 100 years ago. African physicians in this country were not allowed to join the American Medical Association, so they had to start their own medical association. Every aspect of life has been influenced by racism, so we need to understand that. We need to understand and realize the fact that racist governments and institutions do not change by the goodness of their heart. They only change when they are forced to do so by conscious African people. And so we live in a society where practically every aspect of our life is controlled or manipulated by other people. Due to the fact that I was trained in advertising and design, I've always had an interest in art. And I look at symbols, I look at pictures, I look at images and try to interpret them from a cultural standpoint. And that's the essence of the African Center tour that we're going to be doing next Sunday in Washington, D.C. It's an analysis of the architecture in Washington, D.C., a discussion on the African origins of that architecture, and then a study of how this information has been incorporated into the very essence of Washington, D.C. And you can see that same pattern has been repeated in every city throughout the United States of America. If you know what to look for, if you understand the symbols and understand how the symbols are related to the history, you can go anywhere in the world and reconstruct your cultural identity. The information is right before your very eyes, brothers and sisters. But if you don't understand it, you'll walk by without really having a clue as to what it is that you're dealing with. To give you some examples of the extent of the racism that we have to deal with in this society, I want to share with you some illustrations that reinforce the fact that racism is and probably will be one of the biggest issues that we'll ever be confronted with. All right, this particular image was a cartoon, an illustration that was in a newsletter that was produced by AT&T about 2 years ago. Over 30,000 copies of this newsletter were distributed to AT&T employees throughout the world. And in this illustration, the artist shows various people using various people using the technical equipment of AT&T. You see a Caucasian in North America using the telephone, Caucasian in South America using the telephone, 2 Caucasians in Europe on the telephone, but in Africa you see a gorilla. And it was only when the African American employees at AT&T complained did they apologize. The people responsible for producing this image apologized. And they said in issuing that apology that they didn't realize that it was offensive to black folk. All right? We are invisible in their society. Another example of this process, there was the Indiana State Medical Association every year has a conference in Indianapolis. And they send out invitations to members of the state legislature as well as physicians throughout the state. The theme for their reception that year was entitled Jungle Fever. And they showed this image on the invitation. Over 15,000 of these invitations went out to people throughout the state. They showed a black man dressed as a cannibal with a bone in his nose, cooking 2 white people in a pot. And again, it wasn't until the African American members of the Indiana State Legislature received their invitation and complained that the people responsible for creating the invitation in the first place apologized. And what was their excuse? They didn't realize that it was offensive. We hear that over and over again. We will continue to hear it over and over again until you all send a very clear message that you will not tolerate your perceptions of reality to be distorted by people. You have to understand how important these images are and how they affect your psyche. 2 other examples I want to share with you real quick so that you can begin to become conscious of how subtle on one hand and how blatant on the other hand these symbolic attacks are and how they affect and influence your psyche. A couple of years ago, Spike Lee produced a movie in 1991, produced a movie called Jungle Fever about interracial relationships, okay? The movie was released on June the 10th, 1991. The week that that movie was released, 2 national publications featured the lead actors in that movie on the front page of their magazine. One publication was a European-centered publication, that was Newsweek. The other publication was a Negro-centered publication, and that was Jet magazine. Now, I want you all to look at these 2 covers and tell me the difference you see between the 2. Here is Jet. That's Jet magazine, and here's Newsweek. Okay? What you have to realize, when people produce a magazine, a television commercial, a radio commercial, a movie, when anything is produced in advertising, there's a group of men who sit around a table and determine every component that is going to be incorporated into that visual image, into that ad, into that movie. So nothing is there by accident. You have the art director, you have the photography director, you have the writer, you have various individuals sitting around determining everything that you see. The pictures, the placement of the individuals on the pictures, the size of the type, the placement of the type is all important. It's all designed to send specific messages. And what you will notice in the media is that height denotes power. Here on the cover of Newsweek, you see an image that shows the European woman in a position that says that she is superior to the brother. It reinforces the hierarchy that exists in this country. That hierarchy is white male, white female, black male. That's the hierarchy. Contrast that to this image, Jet magazine. Think about it. These art directors had a host of photographs to choose from, but they chose photographs that would reinforce their cultural orientation. Look at this Newsweek cover again. What else do you see when you look at that cover? The expression, they're not smiling on this picture. She looks like she's mothering him, right? And her hand is on his shoulder, almost pushing him away, all right? But then one other thing that you'll notice is that, and you really can't see it that well because of the quality of this color Xerox, but her face is lightened on this image and his face is darkened in order to reinforce the caption of this particular issue of the publication, Tackling a Taboo. All right? All of these things are done in order to manipulate the images which will ultimately affect and influence your consciousness. Now, we need to realize that racism is an unavoidable fact of life in America. We need to understand how racist images attack us constantly, 24 hours a day. We need to understand that whoever is responsible for creating images will ultimately determine your level of consciousness. How you feel about yourself is determined by how you see yourself. And if the images that are constantly projected about you says that you are less than human, then you will act less than human. Others will regard you as less than human. Carter G. Woodson said it best when he said, when you control a man's thinking, you don't have to worry about his action. You don't have to tell him to stand here or there, for he will find his proper place and will stay in it. A person who has been miseducated does not have to be ordered to the back door of any society because they will go without being told. In fact, if there is no back door, their very nature will demand one. Why? Because their miseducation makes it necessary. So my question to you is, who has been responsible for educating you? The same people who were responsible for enslaving your foremothers? The same people who have been responsible for giving you your concept of God? Well, at some point in time, you've got to stop and reevaluate this entire process. So that's what I want to focus on this evening, reevaluating the information that has been instilled within our conscious mind. It is a process, in this particular instance, it's a 7-step process that is designed to help recovering Negroes and former black people become born-again Africans. It's designed to help you resurrect your African consciousness. The first step The first step we want to focus on is the step that you must be actively engaged in the process of freeing your mind. You must work to free your mind. You have to do that, begin the process of freeing your mind by evaluating everything that you've been taught, everything, and develop a discriminating eye so that you can ultimately learn what not to believe. You don't want to believe everything everybody tells you. You want to get some information to reinforce that, to validate that information, to determine whether or not it should be programmed within your consciousness. This brain here that you have is a sacred instrument, and you don't give anybody access to this instrument. This process for freeing your mind can be developed through the development of a thinking process that is referred to as higher order thinking skills. Educators refer to this as higher order thinking. And there's 3 basic levels of higher order thinking, and I referenced them in Nile Valley Contributions, but I want to cite them this evening. The first level is that of the literal level, the second is the inferential level, and the third is the evaluative level. Now, what does that mean? At the literal level of consciousness, you are programmed to accept all information as it is presented to you literally. You don't question any information. At the inferential level, you begin the process of inferring or reading between the lines in an attempt to understand what has not been presented to you. And at the third level, at the evaluative level, you begin the process of evaluating every information, weighing the information as to its validity in your life to determine what you will keep and what you will discard. All right? Your objective as you participate in this process of freeing your mind is to try to function at the evaluative level of consciousness. Why? Because we all have been lied to. We all have been miseducated, and we're trying to reconstruct our consciousness. For example, this object here is referred to as what? What do you call this object? All right? Everyone who calls that object the Sphinx has been miseducated. And you got to free your mind. That is not a Sphinx. The word Sphinx is a Greek word. This statue was made at least 4,000 years before the development of Greece. So what are we doing calling it by a Greek name? The word Sphinx, if you go home and look up the word Sphinx in the dictionary this evening, you'll find the word Sphinx means to strangle or to hold. This image was referred to by the Africans who created it as Hermaket. It means Heru on the horizon. It is an image of Heru, the son of God. The image of Heru on the body of a lion. This statue is symbolic, and it represents the process by which you can develop your higher consciousness through the refinement of your mind. Developing your God consciousness through the refinement of your mind, which allows you to conquer your lower animal nature. See, the lion there represents the bestial nature that exists within every person. So your objective, if you are to succeed in life, is to develop the God consciousness within you so that you can control your lower animal nature and are no longer subservient to your passions. You no longer go out and do something on Friday and Saturday night that you regret 9 months later, because you understand what happens when you are not in control of your consciousness. All right? Hermaket is the name of this statue that we call the Sphinx. It's in the books, brother. It's all in the books. That is a Sphinx. That's a Greek Sphinx. Okay? The reason why this statue was called a Sphinx, the reason why it has the head and breast of a woman, is because this statue was evil. The Sphinx was a monster which was perched on a cliff which led to the city of Thebes in Greece. And everyone who traveled along the road that passed this cliff was asked a question by this Sphinx, which we know this question today is the riddle of the Sphinx. And whoever could not answer this question or this riddle was strangled by this Sphinx. That's why the word Sphinx means to strangle or to hold. The question, or the riddle of the Sphinx, was in essence a test of your level of consciousness, a test of the evaluative level, of consciousness, the inferential level of consciousness that I just talked about earlier. The riddle says what walks on 4 legs in the morning, 3 legs in the afternoon, and 2 legs in the evening, and the more legs that it walks on, the weaker it becomes. This question was put to every person. Whoever could not answer that question was strangled. The only person who successfully answered that question was a man by the name of Oedipus, who realized that that question, who evaluated the question, he didn't take it literally. He inferred as to its deeper meaning and evaluated it based upon his own personal experience and gave the only answer he could, which is man. The question is symbolic. Why? Because man in the morning of his life crawls on 4 legs as an infant. As an adult in the afternoon of his life stands erect on 2 legs, and in the evening as the elder walks with a cane on 3 legs. After Oedipus gave the correct answer to the riddle, the Sphinx then commits suicide. The Greek Sphinx then committed suicide by jumping off of a cliff. Oedipus then went into the city of Thebes, where he proceeded to marry his mother after he had murdered his father. This is Greek history. This is Greek culture. This is Greek philosophy, all right? And based upon this Greek philosophy, European physicians, European scholars have developed what they consider to be a natural worldview. So when Sigmund Freud, the great psychiatrist, heard about this story of Oedipus, he created a concept called the Oedipus complex, which said that every male child wants to murder his father so he can marry and have sex with his mama. Now, I don't know about you all, but I ain't never had the desire to have sex with my mother. That is a European thing. It shows you the extent to which they are not capable of understanding profound concepts which sprang from the minds of human beings, okay? That's why the Greeks had to portray the Sphinx as a woman, because from their cultural point of view, women were inherently evil. The Greeks were the first so-called civilization to legitimize the concept of homosexuality, in that they believed that only men were intelligent, men had the capacity for knowledge, and that the greatest love that a man could ever experience is a love of another man. And so women were inherently evil, so they had to portray this great monster as a female. So you all need to understand that. We love and revere Greek philosophy and the Greek and Greek scientists and Greek mathematicians, but we don't really understand that all these folk were freaks. They were crazy. So you have to reevaluate all of that information that you were taught in school and begin to look at your life differently. The second step, after you reevaluate yourself, you have to begin to know yourself. And this is a serious responsibility. You have to begin to become aware of the significance of that statue of Haramaki. You have to begin to become aware of the significance between the relationship between your mind and your body. The mind is literally and symbolically the seat of God. The mind is capable of influencing every activity that takes place within your body. Every activity. And what's interesting is that physicians now are beginning to understand something about the relationship that exists between the mind and the body, and they're reevaluating their whole concept of the human body. Let me give you one example. There's a book out entitled Ageless Body, Timeless Mind by an Indian physician by the name of Deepak Chopra. And in this book, he talks about an instance where physicians are discovering the power that transplanted organs have on the people who receive the transplants. Let me give you a quote from his book. He said that some transplant patients report an uncanny experience after receiving a donated kidney, liver, or heart. Without knowing who the organ donor was, they began to participate in the memories of the person whose body that organ came from, all right? He cited this specific example. There was a woman who received a heart transplant. And after the heart transplant, she began to develop a craving for chicken McNuggets and beer, all right? Never drank beer before in her life. Never really went to McDonald's, but she had this craving. all right? And then when she would dream at night, she would have visions of this person, this man, this black man named Timmy, who would come to her and talk to her in her dreams, and she couldn't figure out what was going on. She thought she was losing her mind. And so she decided she wanted to find out something about the person whose heart she now had in her body. So she went back to the hospital and was able to search through the records and discovered to her surprise that the heart in her body came from a black man named Timmy. She got his address, went to his house to talk to his family, and discovered that Timmy used to always drink beer and died coming home from where? McDonald's. There you go. Okay, body parts. So what I'm saying is these people are now beginning to reevaluate this thing called life. Now beginning to look at it from a totally different perspective. One of the things that we have got to begin to do is we reevaluate our lives, is to understand it from an African perspective. And when we do that, we'll see that our view of the world was totally different than the view of the Europeans. We understood the relationship that existed between the mind, the body, and the soul, all right? And we viewed the body as sacred because the body is the seat of the soul. The mind is the instrument through which God communicates to you. This is a powerful thing that we have here, this human body. It should not be wasted. It should not be abused. There's a couple of things that I want to share with you, a couple of demonstrations that I want to share with you very briefly to kind of reinforce some of the issues that I'm talking about, because I believe in a hands-on approach and going beyond talking and showing you how this stuff really impacts your life. But the mind doesn't have the ability to distinguish between what is real and what is a lie. The mind responds to whatever information is given to it. For example, if you've ever been in an argument or been in a situation where your life was threatened, your body responded to that crisis by secreting hormones, adrenaline. You started to sweat, your heart started to beat fast, and your body began to prepare itself for what's referred to as the fight or flight syndrome. Either you defend your life and fight, or you run for your life. And your body prepares you to have the strength to do whatever is necessary in order to survive. But if you've ever been in a life-threatening situation, notice how your body responds. And then notice how when you think about or reflect back on that experience, your body also responds. Think about a threatening situation. And as you think about it, you'll feel your heart starting to beat faster. You'll feel your palms starting to get sweaty. You feel your breath beginning to race away from you. Why? Because just by thinking about something, your body accepts those thoughts as if they are happening right now. So the point that I'm trying to get across to you is that you've got to begin to understand how powerful your thoughts are, how they influence your physical body, and how they also influence your behavior, all right? I want to do a little demonstration to illustrate this point, and in order to do it, I need 4 folk. So can I have 4 people just come on up? Doesn't matter who, but 4 people, come on up. I've got this little gadget here, which is like a little ping pong. It's a little toy that has in it 2 batteries. There's 2 metal strips which are connected to each of the batteries. It has a little soundboard, and it also has a light inside of it. And when I hold my fingers on both of these metal strips, then what happens is this little toy lights up. What it illustrates is the fact that this electrical current from one of the batteries is moving through my finger to the other finger and completes the circuit so that this thing lights up. If I lift up my hand, then it stops. So electrical energy flows through the human body, all right? One basic reality. I need one more person. Sister, why don't you come on up? Come on. Somebody, sister, come on up, all right? I got 4 people up here, and let me show you how if we form a circle and hold hands, I touch one end of the strip and the other person next to me touches one end of the strip, I want you to see what happens. Let's form a circle. So let's take one finger and, all right, sister, let go of your hand and then stop. Touch hands again and then repeat. Let go and then stop. All right? Now, all this illustrates is that, first of all, energy flows through the human body. Energy flowed in this one example from my body to his, to hers, to his, and back to mine, and completed the circuit. That's why this ball lit up and made that noise. So all of our bodies are capable of transmitting energy. Physical energy, mental energy, and spiritual energy. You may not be able to see it, you may not be able to smell it, but it's happening. It's going on around you. Let me show you all another brief demonstration that reinforces this concept of this principle that I'm talking about. And to do that, let me bring out this chair. All right. Some of you all may have seen this before, but I want to do it again, and then I'm going to explain to you this process. Take the microphone with me. Okay. Now this is basically a very simple Sesame Street demonstration that illustrates something about the human body and the relationship between the mind and the body. And what the four of us are going to do is to lift this brother up out of the chair using 2 fingers each. All right? The first time we attempt to do it, we won't be successful. Then I'm going to go into conference with my associates here. When we come out of the conference, we'll lift them up, and then I'll explain to you how we did what we did, okay? All right, let's get back in position. On the count of 3. Count of 3. 1, 2, 3. Now, all right. Now let me just explain what we did and how we did it. Energy flows through the body, all right? I already demonstrated that point with this little gadget here. Energy flows into the left side of your body, which is feminine, and receives energy. It flows out of the right side of your body, which is masculine, and transmits energy. Energy also flows through your spinal column, into and out of your body through your brain. You know, when a child is born, a newborn child has a soft spot in their skull. That's where the skull is not fused shut yet, so that energy is now flowing unimpededly through their skull. So our bodies are designed specifically to receive and to transmit energy. So the first time we tried to lift the brother up out of the chair, we weren't able to do it. By us placing our hands over his head, what we did was to begin to synchronize our energy with his energy. And then I gave the people in the circle a directive to visualize in your mind an image of us lifting him up out of the chair. Why visualize it? Because the mind responds, or the body responds to the directions given it by the mind. The body can't distinguish between what's real and what's not real. All right? We are synchronizing our energy. We are telling our bodies to lift this brother up out of the chair with 2 fingers, and then our bodies create the energy which allows us to do that. All right? Shows you the relationship between the mind and body. Anything that you focus your energies on, you will be able to gather the energy to accomplish anything, whether it's good or bad. Energy doesn't discriminate. It just exists. So we need to begin to understand that reality. Left hand receives energy, left hand is feminine, left side of the body is feminine, the right side of the body transmits energy. That's the reason why brothers who know will wear an earring in their left ear if they wear an earring. Don't wear the earring in the right ear because that means something different, okay? You all need to know what it means, all right? If you're going to wear a pierced ear in the first place. But this idea, this concept of energy being transmitted into and through your body is not new. You all already know this, all right? How many of you all have seen this image before? You all have seen that image, right? This image illustrates that demonstration that I shared with you, all right? You will see in these images Jesus holding his left hand over his heart and holding up his right hand, transmitting the love of the energy from his heart out to you. The left hand is feminine and receives energy. Right hand is masculine and transmits energy. That's the reason why if you go to court, you do what? Place your left hand on the Bible and raise your right hand. You say the Pledge of Allegiance, you put your left hand on your heart. The left hand receives energy, right hand transmits energy. See, we need to begin to understand what this whole thing is all about. Let me show you. The information is all around you, but we just don't know how to interpret and how to respond to it. Here is a photograph from a billboard, and there are dozens of these billboards in Ghana, all throughout Ghana. Images of a blonde-haired, blue-eyed Jesus on huge billboards all throughout Ghana. But here in this billboard, it says exactly what I was talking to you all about. The right hand implies power. Right hand transmits power. The left hand receives power. You all are instruments through which the Creator works through. If you don't know that, then you'll be an instrument for your own destruction because other people will utilize you against your own best interests. This stuff is too important and too powerful to take for granted or to leave in the hands of people who have historically shown themselves not to have your best interests at heart. So step number 3, one of the things that you all have got to begin to do is to understand symbolic imagery. Understand symbolic imagery. That's what we're going to be focusing on throughout most of the African Center tour in Washington, talking about the symbols, their meanings in Africa, why they were developed here in the United States of America, and how they've been designed to specifically create certain energy fields and to cultivate a level of consciousness, all right? What is this image here? The caduceus, okay? What is it associated with? Medicine, all right? Now, the next time you all go to visit your doctor, ask your doctor, ask him or her what this symbol means. What is the symbolic significance of this symbol? And I guarantee you $100 they won't be able to tell you. It is a symbol of the medical profession, and yet most physicians don't even have the faintest idea as to what it actually represents. This is a symbol that represents the same process that I was talking to you all about energy flowing through the human body, okay? The 2 serpents represent the energy that flows through the right and the left side of your body. The staff represents your spinal cord. The globe at the top of the staff represents your mind, your brain. The wings on either side of the staff represents the process by which you are able to free your mind based upon your understanding of this principle, this process. That we live in a world full of energy, different types of energy, which flows to us and through us. And if you understand that relationship, then you can begin to live in harmony or at ease with your environment. If you don't understand it, then you will begin to live in a state of dis-ease. Okay? And then you will need to go to a physician to try to get healed. So all of these things are critically important. The human body, like the mind, is being transformed every second. Right now, as I'm speaking to you, there are 6 trillion reactions taking place in your body every second of every day for the rest of your life. You are generating energy, new energy, life within every cell of your body. It's been said that the skin, your skin, which is the largest organ in your body, replaces itself once a month. You get an entire new layer of skin every 30 days, approximately. You get a new stomach lining about every 5 days because of the gases and the acids in your stomach. It would destroy you. You would get ulcers if your stomach lining did not reproduce itself about every 5 days. All right? You get a new liver every 6 weeks. You get new skeletal system every 9 months, or every 90 days, excuse me. By the end of this year, 98% of your body is going to be transformed with new parts. 98%. This is the beauty of this body that we have, this instrument that we have. So the question is, why do you all keep getting sick? Your body has everything it needs to heal itself. So why do you get sick? You get sick because you are out of harmony with this instrument here. And it needs to be tuned up, okay? We're amazing creatures with unlimited potential. But the potential means nothing if it's never cultivated, if it's never tapped into. This symbol here represents the process by which we can tap into ourselves. You all, this is Jehudi, who is the Kemetic nature who is associated with science. He's associated with medicine, all right? The staff that he holds in his hands was the precursor to the caduceus. Jehudi represents the process of divine articulation of speech. He was known to the Greeks as Thoth, T-H-O-T-H. And it is from the word Thoth that we have derived the word thought. Every thought that you think is a manifestation of this process of divine articulation of speech, the attributes of Jehudi. The Greeks took this concept of Jehudi, took this concept of Thoth, Hellenized it, and then Jehudi became the Greek god Hermes. And the staff that Hermes carries in his hand is referred to as the staff of Hermes, the caduceus. Hermes was the Greek god associated with medicine. When the Romans conquered Egypt, took it away from the Greeks, the Romans also took the Greek gods, which had been taken from the Kemetic gods, and so they took Hermes and transformed him into Mercury. Mercury represents the same process, the same attributes as Hermes and Jehudi. What this symbol represents is the relationship that exists between your mind, your body, and your soul. Look at Roman mythology. Who is Mercury? Any of you all know who Mercury was? Messenger of the gods, exactly. He was the messenger of the gods, all right? The Romans named the planets after their gods. The sun is a symbol for the mind. So what is Mercury? Mercury is the messenger of the gods. He is the closest to the sun and moves the fastest around the sun. I think that the year on Mercury is about 90 days, all right? It moves that fast around the sun, all right? So understand this process and how it relates to you. This process symbolizes a process that takes place within the human body. Mercury was derived from the Greek god Hermes, who is also associated with medicine, all right? It is from the word Hermes that we have derived the word hormones. And what are hormones? Hormones are chemical messages which are secreted from God or the brain. And what do those chemical messages do? When they are secreted by the pineal and the pituitary gland, they then send chemical messages to every part of your body, telling it what to do and when to do it. All right? When you go through a stage of puberty, hormones are secreted that begin to tell your body, if you're a female, to begin to go through the process of having your cycle. Your physical structure changes. Your breasts begin to enlarge. If you're a male, you begin to have a wet dream. Your voice begins to deepen. Hair begins to grow on various parts of your body. Why? Because of chemical messages which were secreted from the brain. So this process symbolizes the human body. What we have to begin to do is become conscious of how our ancestors identified this relationship between our body, our mind, and our soul, and the environment. They were aware of the fact that when we sleep at night, our spirit has the ability to communicate with the ancestors. They come to us in our dreams. Some of you may not be very conscious of it, but go talk to your grandparents or an elder in your family and ask them how it was that when they had a problem, a very important problem in their life, and were kind of hesitant to make a decision, they would say, well, child, let me sleep on it. All right? And when they would awaken in the morning, they would say, well, you know, Aunt Jean came to me last night in my sleep and told me that I shouldn't sell this house. The ancestors would come to them in the sleep. Why? Because when you are sleeping, a part of your consciousness begins to commune with the ancestors. We have a very special relationship with the universe, with God, if you will. Our bodies are designed as vessels to receive the energies and the information from God. That's why we're called soul people. That's why we move a little differently, talk a little differently, dance a little differently, because we hear, we feel different forms of energies than other folk. You all are familiar. They say that black folk have this tendency to vibe on other folk. You know, you come into a room and you just feel the vibes aren't right? What are you talking about? You're talking about your body being able to feel the energy in the room that is being disseminated by folk who don't have goodwill on their mind. So if you are in tune with your body, it tells you, get the hell out of here, man. You don't want to be here. If you listen, you go. If you don't listen, then you read about what happened to the person who stayed the next day. Have you ever wondered why there's this jazz label called Blue Note Records? You ever wonder what the Blue Note is, what it means? Understand what it means. When I first came to Howard, back in '71, I took a class by Donald Byrd, who was then a professor at Howard, a class entitled The History of Jazz, and he would talk about music and some of the things that they dealt with as musicians. And he told us this story of when he and some of his partners were playing at a club in France. And every night they would come and jam, and there was this guy who would sit in the front row, listen to him play, and take pen and paper and write down what Byrd was playing. And he said he came to him one evening and said, you know, I've been coming here for the last 4 or 5 days, listening to you play, writing down the music, but when I go home and play it, it doesn't sound like what you played. And Byrd laughed and said, well, that's because, my man, you can't hear the blue note. The blue note is a level, is a range of music that Europeans cannot hear. They cannot hear. That's the significance of Harold Melvin and the Blue Notes. We vibe to a different frequency than other folk. We hear things they don't hear. We see things they don't see. We feel things that they don't feel. So as long as you strive to be like them and not be like yourself, you're going to hear the wrong thing. You're going to feel strange feelings because you aren't in tune with yourself. So what we have to begin to do for the fourth step in this process, we have to begin to nurture our spirit. We have to truly begin to understand what this energy is that exists within us. We all are in possession of aspects, spiritual aspects of the Creator that manifests itself within us. So to that extent, each one of us is sacred. Every person in this room is sacred, is a reflection of the Creator. Whoever you perceive the Creator to be, you are a reflection of the Creator. So then you have to treat yourself with respect. There is a part of your body, there's a part of your brain right here that's called the temple. It's called the temple. Why is it called the temple? Because this point here, if you go through here and straight down, where these two lines intersect is where the pineal gland is. And the pineal gland is referred to as the seat of the soul. It is the source from which hormones are secreted. It is your direct line of communication to the ancestors and to God. Okay? That is where you go to commune with the ancestors, with the Creator. So just as the temples in Kemet are sacred places not to be desecrated, this temple here is a sacred place. You desecrate it by thinking certain thoughts, by saying certain things, by putting certain things into your body that human beings ain't supposed to eat. Every time you do this, you put your body out of harmony with the Creator and aren't able to function as human beings are supposed to function. So we function on a subhuman level and have been doing it for so long, we are comfortable with this inability to live as we're supposed to live. What do you see when you look in the mirror? Do you see a reflection of the Creator? Do you see God manifesting itself within you? What do you see when you look at the brothers and sisters next to you? Do you see a reflection of God in them? Which says, if I see God in you, then I've got to treat you the same way that I would treat myself. If we truly understand or understood this relationship, then our relationship to each other would be profoundly different. We have to begin to strive towards that. If you are not in control of your perception of God, if you are not in control of your perception of God, then you run the risk of being spiritually molested. Whoever controls the image of God in your mind determines your ultimate ability as a human being. Right now, there's a move afoot to begin to portray Jesus as an African, which is good on one level, but you still have to understand that this concept comes from the Nile Valley. Is directly related to the story of Asar, Aset, and Hedu. So we have to be able to take it all the way back to the source, not to the European interpretation of the source, because the information is available to you, which will help you to unlock the keys that are in Christianity, or the keys that are in Islam. They are keys to wisdom and power. Now this issue is so critically important for us as a people, because we call ourselves very religious people, but we never stop and ask a very basic question. If we are truly as religious as we think we are, if we have the ability to communicate with God like we say we do, then why are we suffering? See, because from my standpoint, if you are in harmony with the Creator, then you do not experience illness, because your body is able to heal itself in very short periods of time. You do not experience physical, mental, or spiritual distress, because your body is in harmony with the Creator. You do not experience times of financial difficulty. Why? Because you understand that money is a tool. Money is an instrument. Money is energy, which allows you to bring things into your environment which will improve the quality of life. That's why the European American puts on his currency, "In God we trust." United States of America is the only country in the world that puts that on his money. Why? Because they understand that God is them, and they trust nobody but themselves. I had an experience a couple of years ago where I was talking to an audience. Some brothers from an Air Force base in Japan had invited me over during the month of February to give a lecture for Black History Month. It's talking about African history and culture, the African origins of the concept of religion, and made a comment that when I was just prior to my being introduced, the pastor at the base, who was a brother from Chicago, my hometown, closed his prayer with the word amen. And I asked for a show of hands of the people in the audience. There must have been about 300 or so people in the audience. I asked for a show of hands of the people in the audience who knew that when the pastor said the word amen, he was calling the name of an African god. And maybe 3 or 4 people raised their hand. And I went on to explain how this concept of amen came from Kemet and what it really refers to, the unseen presence of the Creator. I understand that the following day, Sunday, when some of the people who attended my lecture, and these were brothers and sisters primarily, some of the people who attended my lecture went to church service, they asked the pastor if my comments were correct, if the word amen was the name of an African god. And the pastor told them, well, yes, I do believe that Brother Browder was correct. The word amen is the name of an African god. And do you realize that given an opportunity to begin to see themselves in the image of God, these miseducated Negroes turned away and said that they were no longer going to use the word amen? We're talking about the height of miseducation, self-hatred. And as a result of this self-hatred, we turn on ourselves constantly. So the 5th step that we have to deal with is that we have to begin to understand who we are. Specifically, we have to remember the Ma'afa, the great disaster, the Holocaust of the African enslavement. We have to begin to honor the memory of the millions of men, women, and children who died for over 400 years during this process of the enslavement of African people, and began to hold these people up in high esteem to honor their memory. Because the only reason why we exist is because of their strong will. Theoretically speaking, we should have been wiped off the face of this planet. No people on earth have gone through what we've gone through. We should be extinct. Or those of us who are alive today should be stark raving lunatics. But the fact that we are here and here in great numbers and still have our minds intact is an indication of the relationship that exists between the Creator and us. So we need to understand that. And we need to give honor to those brothers and sisters who knew that, who preserved the history and culture and passed those traditions on to us. If we truly honored our ancestors and respected them, then we would do what every ethnic group in this country has done. I heard Brother Maddox make reference to a brother here who has a collection of slave artifacts, which he said should be in a museum. Why is it that we don't have a museum to commemorate our Holocaust, our Ma'afa? When you all come to Washington next Sunday, we're going to drive past the United States Holocaust Memorial, which was built 2.5 years ago by Jewish American citizens who had the sense to collect $150 million of their own money to build a monument to memorialize their ancestors. They hired a Jewish architect to design a building that would symbolize in every detail their horror and their atrocity, which took place thousands of miles across the ocean in Germany. Even though they're here in America, they understand the importance of honoring your ancestors wherever you are. And as a result of them building this monument, building this memorial to their ancestors here in the United States of America in Washington, D.C., as of last year, January the 1st, 1994, your tax dollars are now being spent to maintain this institution. Where is our museum to memorialize our ancestors? We won't have one as long as we don't believe that they are worthy of honoring. They even got a stamp museum in Washington, D.C. Every ethnic group in this country maintains their history and their culture by connecting with their ancestors. The Italians do it every year. They have the Columbus Day Parade. They're connecting with their ancestors. Every year the Chinese have to celebrate Chinese New Year. They're celebrating with their ancestors. Kwanzaa is something that is relatively new. Black History Month is something that is relatively new. But we've got to move beyond that and build institutions that our children and grandchildren we'll be able to look back on and say, yes, my people cared enough about their history and culture to create something, to preserve something for me. Right now, we ain't got it. And we wonder why our children don't listen to us. The sixth point that we have to look at, sixth issue, is that we have to begin to prepare ourselves for war. Based on these 5 steps that we've talked about earlier, we need to begin to understand that we have been under attack from the moment we set foot on this land. And the war takes on different forms. You know, you have low-intensity warfare. You have psychological warfare. You have germ warfare, drug warfare, alcohol warfare, spiritual warfare, mental and cultural warfare. We have been under attack. And so what I want to focus on briefly is what we need to begin to do in order to fight a war and win. A few basic steps. First step is that we have to know our objectives. We have to be able to have a clear vision and a goal. Know what it is that we need to begin to do and move towards achieving that goal or that vision every second of every day for the rest of our life. You know, there's an African proverb that says, if you don't know where you're going, any road will take you there. Well, we've got to be very clear about where it is we want to go and what it is we need to be able to do in order to get there. The next phase is that we've got to have a plan. We've got to do more than just have a vision or a goal. We've got to have a plan. How do you achieve that goal? You achieve that goal by analyzing every aspect of that goal, breaking it down into achievable components, and begin to work towards fulfilling each one of those components completely. So when you complete the entire task, you've got something that will last, and not something that will fly in the face of the wind or any strong opposition. You've got to work towards that. The next step is that we've got to master deep knowledge. We ain't talking about superficial understanding. And let me say this, we got to move beyond hotep and just wearing African clothing and kente cloth and thinking that we hip or we cool or culturally correct. We got to move beyond that. And you've got to begin to understand that mastering deep knowledge allows you to increase your awareness of nature, God, and yourself. Focusing your energy. It's been said that a picture is worth 1,000 words. Well, deep knowledge is worth 1,000 pictures. Intense study. Some of us are going to have to kill our television. Sit down with a book. Sit down with a book. Read to our children. Discuss what we've read so that we can begin to understand what it is that we have to do in order to save ourselves. We have to become invincible. How do you become invincible? Studying your enemy and knowing your enemy better than he knows himself. Know his weak points. You know that your enemy is only able to stay strong because he pimps you. He lives off of you. He's a parasite. Hey, don't support him financially. Don't support him culturally. Don't support him spiritually. You know what will weaken him if you understand his nature and move to defend yourself. You have to move with all deliberate speed. You can't be unsure. You don't have to move with haste. You don't have to be in a hurry, but just move consistently. Consistently, okay? On one level, you've got to learn to be invisible. What do I mean by that? You got to learn to shut up and not put all your business in the street. See, because understanding this relationship with energy, see, when you go out and put all your business in the street, people have an idea as to what you're up to. And if the people don't like you because they don't like themselves, they will begin to place roadblocks in your way. So if you're cool, if you keep your cards close to your chest, develop a plan, work your plan, and begin to implement that plan and keep it to yourself. Or a handful of people who agree to work with you to implement a specific plan. You ain't got to brag about what you're doing, just do it. That's what counts. You have to be strong. be strong and develop mental, physical, and spiritual strength. And realize that the only way that you're going to survive is if you take care of this body here that was given you by God. Treat it as if it is a sacred structure. The last point in this series of how to win a war is that you've got to be able, at the appropriate times, to win without fighting. See, you don't always have to wage a war by dropping bombs and killing folk. Most of the wars are won without even firing a shot. You can win without fighting if you analyze a situation and move swiftly to nip a problem in the bud when it begins to surface, so that you don't have to worry about confronting a bigger problem 3 months down the road or 3 years down the road. If you're taking care of business, you got everything under your control, and you don't have to worry about folks surprising you because you are on top of your game. The seventh point, seventh step, is that we've got to begin to prepare ourselves for freedom. Freedom is not guaranteed to any person, but it is only achieved and maintained by the judicious use of power. Who are you giving your power to? Every time you turn on the television, you're taking power away from yourself. Every time you're listening to the radio or participating in some activity that is not going to advance your development here in New York City, advance your development here in the United States of America, advance your development here on planet Earth, you are committing suicide. You have to begin to cultivate the power of your mind, the greatest instrument that you have. You do that by reading and studying. You don't submit your mind and your free will to the television, because the people who control it know how to manipulate your subconscious mind. They got you programmed to the point where you walk into a grocery store and purchase items based upon the jingles that you remember, because they understand how music embeds images into your memory. You have to begin to form study groups, become active in organizations such as this, so that you can be clear as to what your goals are and clear about the strategies that will allow you to achieve your goals. You have to develop a way of protecting the people in your community, particularly the elders and the youth. The elders. When I came into town today, I went to sit at the feet of Dr. John Henry Clark. The man is a genius. He is a genius. We can learn something from the elders in our community. Why? Because it's our responsibility to protect the young. See, when you don't protect the young, then they're going to turn on you because you haven't created the environment that was necessary for their survival. We've got to do our job. You've got to use the power in your body. Realize that it's a temple. Be aware of your thoughts and understand how your thoughts influence your body. Be aware of your thoughts and do not allow them to be unduly influenced by people on television, in the movies, on the radio, that their only desire is to create or to perpetuate a certain image of black folk. You can't be serious on television or in the movie. You can only be a comedian. You can only tell jokes and laugh at your sisters and brothers. You can't be serious. And the more often you watch these images, the more this reality will be impressed into your conscious mind. You've got to replace it with images that tell you who you are. You've got to begin to be more conscious about your diet. Soul food probably killed more black folks than the Ku Klux Klan. We got to understand that diet, exercising, learning how to breathe properly will allow you to perpetuate your life. Anything else will kill you. You've got to begin to use the power of your spirit and realize that everything that happens to you in your life serves as a barometer of where you are in your relationship to the Creator. As I said before, if you're having male or female problems, having financial difficulties, if you're having one illness after another, after another, after another, means that you're out of sync with the Creator. And you need to begin to take the some time to understand this relationship that exists between your mind and your body. You may need to fast. You may need to do some serious meditation or some serious prayer in order to ask the ancestors to tell you what it is you need to do in order to correct those problems so that you can manifest a godlike consciousness here on earth. That's what you're supposed to do. Everything that has been created on this planet sprang from the minds of the consciousness of human beings. Everything begins first as an idea in your mind. The seats that you're sitting in, the building that we're in now, that video camera, the cars that you would drive home, the airplanes that fly through air, all began first as an idea in somebody's mind. What we refer to as nothing is the source of everything. And those people who are involved in the process of bringing things into creation understand that the mind is the most fertile instrument on the planet. And by putting yourself in harmony with the consciousness of other creative people, ideas will pop into your mind. They will pop into your consciousness. And then you'll sit down with pen and paper and put them into a two-dimensional form. And as you meditate on them and cultivate and refine this idea, you begin to manifest it in a three-dimensional form. That's how everything came into existence, through the utilization of your mind. The Europeans understand that. That's why they have waged psychological warfare on African people for the last 500 years, and they are not about to stop because they understand who you are. They understand who you are. They understand the potential that exists within you. You've got the power today, just by changing your mind, to change the course of planet Earth for the next 2,000 years. You got the power to do that. European knows that. That's why he has liquor stores on every corner in your community. That's why you can go to any black community in the United States, and within 15 minutes you can find out where the drugs are being sold and purchase whatever you want. They are there by design. They don't have to be there. And if you truly care about yourself and your community, you can do something about it, as opposed to waiting on the Lord or asking the white man to please lift his foot off his back. He's already shown you that he's not going to do it. He's not capable of doing it. So as you engage in this process of rescuing and reconstructing your mind, begin to realize that there's no such thing as bad luck. There's no such thing as chance, coincidence, or accident in the universe ruled by law and divine order. Everything happens for a reason. You can create paradise in your life, in your community, if you focus your energies on creating paradise. You can also create hell if you focus your energies. What do you want? What do you want? You're capable of anything. What do you wish to do with the power that God gave you? That's the issue. That's the challenge. So then you all have to begin a process every day. I mean, if you're serious about your life, if you're serious about resurrecting your African consciousness, you've got to begin every day to take at least 30 minutes for yourself. You figure the average person spends 8 hours a day. Those people who have a job spend 8 hours a day on the job, about 2 hours preparing to go to work, 2 hours coming back from work, and about 8 hours sleeping. So you spend approximately 20 hours every day engaging in activities that someone else is profiting for. How much time are you going to spend for yourself? Start by just giving yourself 30 minutes a day. Within those 30 minutes, what should you do? You should take some time to analyze yourself. How did you act throughout the course of that day? What did you do? What were your objectives? Were your objectives? I mean, you need to be easy with yourself in the beginning as you begin to participate in this process. My goal is to stop saying derogatory things about my own people, because I understand that everything I say about someone comes back to me. And if I truly love me, I want to change my consciousness. Change the quality of energy that's going to emanate from the seat of God that rests within me. So make yourself a promise that I'm going to monitor my thoughts and only limit myself to saying 5 negative things about people every day. And then check yourself at the end of the day and see how well you did. Be kind to yourself, you know, because we're going through 400 years of brainwashing. Be kind to yourself. But then once you get it down to, once you begin to become conscious of what you are thinking, then how you are thinking, then you can cut that down to 3 times a day, 4 times a day, and then get to the point where you say, I ain't saying nothing negative about nobody. I'm going to think positive. I'm going to project creative thoughts for myself and my people and watch your world transform itself instantaneously. You got the power and the ability to do that. You've got to also take some time within every day upon assessment of how you perform during that day to plan strategies for tomorrow. If you did well today, you're going to do better tomorrow. Set reasonable goals and objectives for yourself. Be kind. Understand that it took 500 years to create a Negro, you know? So it's going to take us some time to work through that. Be kind to yourself in the process, but be deliberate. Plan for tomorrow, one day at a time. And then, at some course during the day, you got to take time to pray or meditate. Doesn't matter, on one level, I'm telling you, it doesn't matter who you pray to, as long as you do it seriously and deliberately. Because you can't be a hypocrite. Pray for this and then go out and do something that's going to counteract your prayer. Prayers generate power and energy. And the more in tune you are with your prayers or your meditation, you will literally begin to tap into that creative source of everything and then begin to manifest it in your environment. That's what you have the ability to do and the right to do. So on a serious note, the things that I've outlined for you are things that you can begin to implement in your life. And in as little as 28 days, you can modify your behavior and create the person that you want to be. That's the power that you have. You're not going to learn this information in school. Not going to learn it in most churches. No fraternities or sororities or Masonic organizations. They should be about teaching you this, but they ain't. But you have the ability to begin to transform the quality of your life, and it begins with the decision that you make today. So in summary, in closing, we've identified racism as one of the primary problems that African people will be confronted with in your lifetime, one of the primary obstacles to freedom. We've discussed how racism distorts your perceptions of history, distorts your perception of reality, and how you have to begin to create a new perception of reality in your mind. We've discussed the need to see the world through African eyes as opposed to Europeanized eyes, and understand what things mean to us from an African worldview and not a distorted, inhumane perspective. We talked about increasing the power of the brain by developing your evaluative thinking skills and learning to function at the level where you become conscious of everything that goes on around you. Assess it to determine what information you're going to allow to be stored in your temple. Talked about your body and how your body is a sacred instrument and should not be violated with foods that are going to counteract the basic design of your body. It should not be polluted with thoughts which are going to link you with negative thought forms and negative energy and negative people, and actions that help to ultimately determine the type of person you are. We talked about the relationship between the mind and the body and the importance of understanding that this relationship does affect and influence everything that you do. You have the power to create life, to maintain life. You have to begin to understand the importance of honoring your ancestors and realize that they are real. When you all pour libation and call the ancestors to come into this auditorium, y'all ain't playing no games. And if you do not have a purpose for calling them here, they're going to get angry. They're going to do two things. One, they may come and work against you in a manner that's going to be detrimental to your well-being because you are misusing their time and their energy, or they may stop coming at all. And the last thing in the world you want is to be disconnected from that source of power and consciousness. The last thing that you want in this lifetime. We've also given you a basic prescription for freedom. On one level, it's very simple. All you have to do, follow the program. Implement the various steps every day of your life and watch your life transform itself right before your very eyes. When all is said and done, The information that I've shared with you this evening means nothing if you all walk out of here and go back to your old habits. This is your opportunity to make a commitment to yourself, to make a commitment to your ancestors and say, yes, I am ready for a change, and the change is going to start today. The change begins to me. I want to close with the poem that I had in Nile Valley Contributions. Excuse me, not Nile Valley Contributions, the Browder file. Transition 13, which represents the process of spiritual transformation, process by which we can begin to do all of the things that we talked about. In the beginning, we knew not. We studied. We learned all there was to know. We taught others. But then we forgot what we had learned, and then forgot that we had forgotten. So that now we are taught information that we already have. So what do? We study. We come here to the slave theater to study, to learn all there is to know, and to teach others. And the challenge that awaits us as we prepare to move forward into the 21st century is, will we forget again? Thank you all very much. All right.
Let's give Brother Browder a warm applause. Anthony Browder. Let's give it, Anthony Browder. Let us hold hands, those who are running out. One day, let's make an affirmation to our people. Let us make sure that as we leave, seriously, I'm sure y'all still have a lot of money in your pocket because you certainly didn't leave it here. We want you to use that money at least for no other reason to get Nile Valley contributions to civilization. It is a monumental book, believe me. It is a monumental book. It's an opportunity to get it, have it autographed. It's a major work. And I think that you can tell just by the presentation this evening of the profound research that this brother has really put into this publication. There are a lot of people who write books and don't give us that much. But I'm telling you, nobody, no African person, I don't care who you are, and it's really sad to be a doctor or a lawyer and not recognize the symbols of our profession and the African origins of those symbols. That's real serious. Or to be a minister and not understand the African origins of religions. And more than 95% of our preachers do not know their history. And so Malcolm was absolutely correct. Of all the disciplines, history best rewarded to reward our research. And so as you leave, regardless of whether you make a contribution to UAM, certainly make a contribution to yourself and stop by and get Nile Valley contributions to civilization and from the Browder file. That's important more than anything else. We need to revolutionize our own minds. And the only way that we're going to do that is with information. And that's the reason why this country spends more money on information than anything else, including the snitches that are in here tonight. All right? Including the snitches that are in here tonight. America spends more money on information than anything else in the world. And all snitches should make sure that you make a contribution so you continue to have your job. It is not wise to be a snitch and not support the movement. Because when the movement is on here, I will assure you, cracker will have no further use for you. So you should absolutely encourage people to come out here to guarantee you your job, if you really want a job, and may possibly get a pension at the end. So we all have to work together. If you do not know how to be a good snitch, then I will conduct a course for you. All right? That's all you got to do is to make a suggestion in the back, and we will hold a course on the business of snitching. So you not only must be a snitch, you must also understand the business of snitching. All right? So I don't want you to lose your job. So you should definitely make sure that your contributions are here every week. Please repeat after me. We're an African people. We are from our homeland. We're out of our names, our languages, our cultures, our religions, our womanhood, our manhood, our sisterhood, our brotherhood, and our self-respect. But we shall rise, never to fall again. Up, ye mighty race. You can accomplish what you will. No justice, no peace. No justice, no peace. No justice, no peace. Hug the person again and let them know you're still glad that they're an African.